of the magic dragon lived by the bees. That doesn't sound right. Bees, knees. Hmm. I wonder if I change it to this and then. Oh! Hello there! I didn't see you again. I know you've been all clamoring to hear my new composition, but it's not yet quite done. It will be a great and epic song one day, you'll see. It's about a. Oh, so you don't want me to sing a story? Okay then, since you have no taste for music, I guess I'll regale you with one of my tales. Hmm. Oh yes, it's about a magical world full of fantasy, power, great heroes, evil villains, you know the stuff. And it goes something like this.
Even from 3 caverns away, the shriek of breaking metal echoed against the stone. Yet another broken excavator. If Karn had been an organic being, he would have sighed. Instead, he only paused and listened to the excavator's lingering rattles. He pitied his machines. No single setting could accommodate the eccentric geology of the caves of Koilos, where olivine rock was as likely to back into sandstone as cinnabar, but he had no alternative. Here, he'd find the secret to operating the Silex, and he'd find it before any Phyrexian agent could. Condensation beaded on his body, the droplets joining to slide down his metal plating. No one seemed to believe him, but he knew the truth. The Phyrexians were here on Dominaria. He could feel it, like he could feel the stone and the interplanar technology riddling its layers. He turned sideways to squeeze through a narrow passage. The basalt grated against his chest but gave way without scratching him. He ducked under translucent stalagmites into a low cave. Clear selenite coated the bones of Thran prisoners, and fragmented Thran technologies, their gold traceries distorted. Khan located the failed excavator to the rear of the cave. The poor excavator steamed as if vexed with its unmanageable job, and its overheated metal housing ticked with a soft tink, tink, tink as it cooled. Karn wove between the stalactites and water pools, careful not to break any of the delicate violet mineral deposits or disturb the freshwater anemones and tiny blind fish, bleached by a life that had, until now, passed into darkness. Karn placed his hand on the excavator.
Shall I fix you then? Yes?
Steam sighed from the overheated machine. At his gesture, screws unwound themselves along their threading. He set them aside and removed the housing. The stripped-out gear greeted him. He removed it and set to generating a replacement. His fingers tingled with magic, its charge pulling together to generate something from nothing. Metal materialized layer upon layer to create a duplicate part. He liked working in the caves of silence. In the sun's absence, only the water's metronome drip measured out his days. He was alone here. Other planeswalkers didn't like the interplanar distortion that rubbed at their senses in the caves of Koilos. Karn didn't either, but he appreciated the isolation it gave him. He didn't have to answer questions, or worry about whether the Phyrexians had gotten to someone, completed them. He could seek the key to operating the Silex in solitude. he would win the fight alone. What fight? Joyride placed her hands on her hips in exasperation. Khan, the Phyrexians were defeated centuries ago, and these new ones you told me about are trapped on their plane.
They're here.
Khan told her.
Defeating the Phyrexians in combat means nothing. They aren't an army. They are hate embodied. They promise Dominaria's destruction.
Her voice had softened. Just because Fencer... Khan didn't want to think about Fencer. He slipped the gear into its shaft and tightened it down. He replaced the housing, sliding it into place, and then threaded in each screw. Small pleasures. He patted the excavator and smiled.
That's better, isn't it?
He knew it wasn't alive, wasn't responding to him, but it almost felt like it was as he flipped a lever and watched the excavator move forward and began digging into the cave wall. The stone shuddered. Fine white dust plumed away from the excavator's plain shovel limbs. If organic beings had been present, Karn would have had to worry about using water to damp out the dust. Their lungs were so fragile. Better that he was alone, wasn't it? No one held him back, eating and sleeping hours away. No one delayed his progress with chit-chat. The pulverized rock turned violet. Then, the excavator's rumble changed to a whine as it hit the open air. The excavator stepped back, and Karn peered into the cavern it had opened. The rock had been thin as an eggshell, but extremely hard. On the other side, the cavern's interior was coated with opal. The glow from his eyes caught on the iridescent flecks, suffusing the cavern with an amber glimmer. The dust-coated workshop looked like it came from Urza's mortal lifetime, or even prior, when magic's theories and practices were less well known, and technology propelled Dominaria's progress forward. Intricate glass tubing, beakers of varying sizes, defunct burners, powdery remnants of ancient chemicals, wire cutters and rollers for clay, buckets coated with desiccated glazes, gears and cogs, even a small vented forge, tongs placed casually to one side as if its smith, interrupted, had walked away from a task undone. In one corner, shackles, a reminder that the caves of Koilos once housed the ugliness of the Thran before it transformed into Phyrexia. This workshop had been some artificer's sanctuary and some prisoner's nightmare. Karn recognized the setup meant to exploit sentient beings for experimentation when he saw one. He'd seen too many such scenes when he'd been newly formed.
How did all of this survive so intact?
If only he could share this sight with someone. He really had to stop talking to himself. Karn stepped into the cavern as lightly as his heavy body permitted. What if a stray vibration caused these delicate objects to shatter, destroying data? The books, arranged on a single long shelf with jewel-covered spines, tempted him with their knowledge, but he dared not take one down. The paper would probably crumble into dust should he touch it. He peeked into the beakers, tinted with dried-out fluids, and then examined the forge's ashes. Nothing. He examined the pottery workshop and saw it. A diagram of the silex painted on parchment. A coppery bowl with handles and small black figures marching around its base. A gray slab of clay sat next to the diagram, etched with symbols duplicating those depicted in the diagram's faded paint. Some were in Thran, some in the arcing curves of an unrecognizable script that resembled some symbols on the silex. The clay was damaged, partially illegible, and severed wires lay beside it. What had happened here?
I must compare this to the Silex.
At the faint vibration of his words, the books collapsed to dust. Karn winced. He gathered the unfired clay tablet into his hands, careful,
and eased out from the ancient workshop. Khan had sighted his base camp, some distance from the excavators, where the caves had greater stability. Each softly lit tent sheltered his equipment from the steady drip of water. Khan let the brightness guide his steps, the hollow cavern booming with his footfalls. With the tents lit from within, coming back to camp almost felt like coming home. Khan ducked into the largest tent, stepping around the large golden Thran artifact he'd left in front of the entrance. Inside, he shimmied past a broken piece of metal he had collected days ago, intending to reshape it back to usefulness. He stepped over a pile of power stone shards and sat at his work desk. It, like the rest of his tent, was too cluttered. He had no space for his newest find. Atop the papers and small artifacts, he saw Joyra's letters, scattered, opened, but unanswered.
What does the letter say? Will Gon eventually find what he's looking for? Or will someone or something beat him to it? All of these questions and more will be answered if you listen to my new composition. I promise it will be good, just a few tones and you'll like it. And okay, I'm just joking. Of course, I will be back to continue your story. Until next time, I'm your host, the Solemn Bard Mordecai.